Today, we're going to talk about how to get as strong and as jacked as possible. In other words, we're going to talk about how to get as strong and jacked as Than, because Than sent our group like this video. It was like really hardcore music, and he's like repping it out, bench press. It was pretty cool. We'll have to show that. Maybe we could share that on.
You can show people. That's fine.
We'll do
as
it
long
on
as you're
social
okay with
media.
people seeing the end of that clip with me twerking.
Come on.
I set that as my wallpaper.
Oh no. This is starting out great.
Yes.
Great. Oh man. Hey, I'm so glad you guys could join us. And for those listening in, this is a really important topic because a lot of people get confused about like how to get strong, also how to get jacked, and in other words, how to build good lean muscle mass. And there's a lot of information on the internet on different ways, different approaches, hybrid approaches, and there's bro science on, hey, if you're going to get strong, you need to do this. If you're going to get big, you got to do this. If you're going to, and there's all this type of stuff. Today, we want to try to cut through that noise and offer you something that's backed by science, something that's cohesive. And so I want you guys to tell me how you would tweak this. So I tried to kind of map out almost mathematically how to think through different aspects of training, like your musculature. So you got muscle strength, muscle power, muscle endurance, and muscle hypertrophy. And I'm sure there's more like ways you can slice that down. When I think about muscle strength, I think of force times distance. So it's basically force production. Okay. You're going from point A to point B. Doesn't matter how fast you go, as long as you go from point A to point B, you've proven that you have enough force production to lift the said weight. Muscle power. Now this gives us the distinction between muscle strength and muscle power. Muscle power is force times velocity. So there's the speed element. Okay. And even if you're not moving the weight fast, you're really trying to move the weight fast. Like you're trying to explode out of the hole. And it doesn't always have to be necessarily really heavy weights, though, for power. Sometimes that could be kind of like plyometrics. Like I'm trying to learn to ignite those muscle fibers fast. And so that would be muscle power. Muscle endurance is force times distance per unit of time. So you're just either it's like rep after rep after rep, or if you're holding something for maybe a long period of time, that's the idea of endurance. Muscle hypertrophy, this is the most debated. There really isn't like a unified agreement on a formula for muscle hypertrophy, but it's basically force times distance. So that sounds a lot like strength, but times mechanical tension. So in other words, you want to at least have sufficient amount of mechanical tension to produce muscle hypertrophy.
Right.
Or you can even talk about like maximizing that tension, which we might put in the category of muscular failure to try to create muscle hypertrophy. So there's a couple of ways of thinking about it.
Yeah.
Today, let me pause. What do you guys think about that? Any feedback, ways you would articulate differently?
No, I think that's pretty spot on. And like you said, you can easily break all of that stuff down into even smaller, more detailed and nuanced points. But for the sake of time, I think that's good. And we'll probably get into some of those nuanced differences as we go on.
As we go on this podcast, absolutely.
Yeah. So we want to talk about like
great breakdown.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I want to talk about like how do we maximize strength? So that's just like simply put, like learning to lift really heavy weights and increasing that. Somebody say, what's the difference between strength training and powerlifting? You guys have any nuance there that you want to add? Like, how would you distinguish between just regular, good old strength training and powerlifting?
I think strength training is more functional, like daily life, your farmer's carries, your like, this is what I'm doing. There's not as much structure to it. Powerlifting indicates that you're going to be doing some key lifts. Like it tends to more, whenever it comes to my mind, is like your Olympic lifts, your snatch, your squat, your bench press. Like that is the lift is the end goal, where whenever I think of strength training, it's more the function of life. You know, I like the videos where people will be like, why I do this lift so I can pick up my kid, and you know, like the going through your daily life basically.
Right. So strength training is really like it's kind of undefined in ways like I could use these set of exercises for strength training. I could throw them all out, replace them with all different exercises, and still at the fundamental is me trying to gain strength.
Yeah, I would say powerlifting is a subset of strength training.
Yes, very good. And it's a sport. Strength training is not a sport.
It's more of a sport.
Powerlifting is a sport.
I like that.
And it's helpful. It's helpful to categorize because people will interchange these. And in some cases, if I'm doing deadlift, squat, bench press, my strength training in those exercises may look very similar to powerlifting. Like you may not even be able to decipher the difference between the two. So definitely some overlap, but it's helpful to make the distinction. So we aren't talking about powerlifting strictly. We're just talking about getting strong. It could involve the bench press, squat, deadlift. But we're not even talking about it in terms of training for a particular sport. We're just talking about getting as strong as possible. And most people going to the gym, you ask them what their goals are, probably going to say, trying to get stronger. So this is relevant to you.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, so we're talking about strength training, and then we're talking about muscle hypertrophy. This is where we're talking about gaining muscle size. So, and people think, well, maybe strength training and hypertrophy is one and the same. I hear people all the time interchange like strength training with actually they're talking about hypertrophy. Let me ask the question, why does it matter? Like, why are we trying to articulate the difference between strength training and hypertrophy? I mean, is this just like something that we're going to nerd out about, or is there really a training purpose behind this?
Would just be really quickly to say something like, what do you want to optimize for?
Yes,
strength or hypertrophy for? Like, because when you're lifting, you're going to get stronger regardless,
right?
Assuming you're doing the right things. The question's just, what do you want to optimize your training for? Am I optimizing for muscle growth, or am I optimizing for strength? And that's going to come down to the kind of key differences that we'll probably go into as we move forward.
What do you guys think about like the difference long-term strength versus I keep messing the word. Hypertrophy. Yeah, see, there it is. I don't know why. It just, that word has got me messed up all the time. Anyway, so the difference between that, like long-term goals, as far as health goes, which one do you think would work better? I think they both have health benefits, but which one do you think would work better for someone who's trying to stay healthy and not tear muscles and be out of the gym because they've got an injury? Which one do you think would be a little more, I think would it be dependent upon how they go about it? Like strength training isn't just going in and lifting as heavy as possible, but strategically lifting a certain amount so that you would get stronger and you can lift more, right?
That's a great question. So in my mind, just most people going in, when they talk about getting stronger, they're not talking about like, I want to squat 900 pounds.
Right.
So I would say that really what they need is good hypertrophy training that results in strength. But they probably have like aesthetic goals. And if you have aesthetic goals, you are going to be better served with hypertrophy training. But if you flip it, you're like, man, I want to get as strong as possible. And it might actually have a end in some kind of sport. Then you would want to prioritize strength with an underlying some training with hypertrophy, maybe building up some weak areas and so forth. But I would start most people like in hypertrophy training. I think it's much safer. Obviously, you can do strength training in a way that's as safe, but the heavier you're lifting, like fewer rep ranges, heavier loads, there's a higher risk to that. And so, people going into that again, though, if you have the stronger you get, though, there's a sense where you're just getting stronger. So the risk is going down, but you're also lifting heavier loads. So there's always
the risk goes up. It's almost, in my opinion, the risk goes up as you continue to get stronger
100%.
because it's almost contradictory, but I agree. The other thing to take into account is, especially if you have like a newbie that's untrained, or maybe even have somebody that is detrained because they went through some surgeries or something like that. In my anecdotal experience, because I don't really know if there's too much literature to back up what I'm going to say here. I'll say this. Typically, hypertrophic training tends to be safer or more stabilized, because most of the time you're isolating muscle groups. And so you want to get into workouts where the limiting factor is the particular muscle group you're targeting, which means you're braced in so many different ways, versus with strength training. Some of the goals are actually to recruit as much motor units as possible when you're working out, which therefore means more risk because you have to pay attention more to what you're doing. So,
yes.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question is because the difference between the two, you typically have like a 2 to 5 rep range with strength training, right, per set, and you're using 85 to 100% of your 1 rep maximum, right? A larger set. Whatever. That's what I've looked at here. Some different research from like the Journal of Strength and Conditioning.
A lot of times
about 90.
They'll shoot
90%.
between like 75 to 95 is really high. Like you don't train there often. And then, there's, after you go through like a mesocycle, you'll attempt a 1 rep max, which you might actually go over 100, what your last, percentage was.
Yeah.
And trying to push that.
That strength. Right. Right. And that it doesn't, but what I've seen in the research is that it doesn't really build a ton of muscle size. It just strengthens. It actually gives a significant neurological improvement to your muscles. Right. So that's
I would say generally that's true. So like it's not about rep ranges as much as the approximation to failure. So in the strength literature, and maybe I'll pull up the study. I'll add in the show notes or something like this because I don't remember off the top of my head who did the study. But in the strength training literature, if you actually train to failure, like often, your strength production is going to go down. Like the amount of fatigue that occurs there is just not good. Right. So your goal is actually not to train to failure in strength, is actually to add weight to the bar. You're trying to do whatever you can to facilitate like that progressive overload. So the intensity is in the load, not in the mechanical tension that's occurring through approximation to failure. So if there was a study by Schoenfield and colleagues that basically said that there were 2 groups, and the groups that trained over 60% of their close to their 1 rep max, they grew in strength and hypertrophy. The groups that trained under 60% of their 1 rep max, they grew in hypertrophy, but not as much in strength. So strength definitely needs to be closer towards that, not 100%, like somewhere between, some would say 80 to 100, some say 75 to 100. There's some ranges there. But but the interesting thing is that strength demands that high rep range. But for hypertrophy, as long as you got close to muscular failure, you could train in the, like 5, like, if you want to do 5 reps.
5 to 30.
Yeah, really.
Now, it doesn't really matter.
Bit, right?
Here's my nuance, though.
I'm sure later.
Yeah, here's my nuance, though. If you train in the 1 to 5 rep range, you probably actually still could gain muscle if you failed. But my goodness, the chances of injury and especially for new, like beginners or even intermediates, to go in and train at that rep range to failure all the time, I just think is not very smart. But you get into the 5 to 12, 5 to 30, depending on what muscle group that you're working. This is why these rep ranges fall where they do. It's not as much science-based, like this is the optimal range for hypertrophy. It's like, hey, if you think of several factors here, one being safety.
Yes.
It might be actually good to not train in the 1 to 5 for hypertrophy. That's great for strength because you're not trying to fail, you're just trying to increase load. But if you are trying to create that mechanical tension, probably want to shoot for between 5 and 30, like Than was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, the rep range it varies. People have different opinions on that, anywhere between, like you said, 5 to like 50. But they stick between, I mean, even 30 to 80% of one rep. 80 is really high, right? For this training. 65, from what I've studied, is about kind of like a happy medium, where you're still going to get strength, but you're also going to be able to have that time under tension, keep that load a little longer, so that your muscles develop in an aesthetically pleasing way, and you stay safe, especially as we get older. You don't, me, like, every once in a while, I just wake up with injuries, and so I'll go into the gym
That's
with
what I
like a
get most of my
shoulder
injuries.
injury.
It's like I
Yeah.
sleep and I wake up like, what?
What
happened?
happened? How did I can't turn my neck a certain way, and I'm trying to do a bench press. I can't do as much. So I just find that, for me, keeping within that higher rep range, but shooting for close to failure is really, it's fun, and I don't injure myself as much, right? I injure myself in different things, playing with the kids, or just doing something stupid that I shouldn't have done. Playing pickleball with the wife. I pull a muscle and she wins the pickleball game, and I get upset, but not during strength training or growing my muscle volume. So I really think, for me, I think, John, you structured this podcast to talk about the strategic hybrid training here in a second. But I think, really, if we were to pick one, if I were to pick one of these, that I could only do one of these, it would be the hypertrophic training. And I would love that. It'd be great, because cycling through, I think, is great. I'm sure Than and you guys have a different opinion, but for me, I enjoy it, especially as I get older. I enjoy
I just like
rep range.
I like training for like overall muscle size. Now, Than, you might know some research on this. I'm curious of your thoughts. I'm going to borrow from old school Jim Bro. Here we go. Arnold Schwarzenegger. Here we go. So one thing that Arnold said that it always stuck with me. He said that powerlifters oftentimes they're trying to develop a technique that helps them lift as much load as possible. So sometimes they're limiting the range of motion. They're not putting their muscles in the hardest or the most disadvantaged position. Arnold says that he would try to find a way to put his muscles in the most disadvantaged position so he gets a good stretch to the overall musculature. And and this is some recent study, there has maybe been a little bit of an overemphasis on crazy range of motion, like get a total crazy stretch. And there's kind of been the pendulum was swinging that direction. Now they're trying to say, yes, get a good stretch, but it's more of an optimal range, not necessarily striving for like stretch the crap out of the muscle and, type of idea. But I do think there's this idea of, and Arnold's would stress this point of, like, for instance, when somebody's doing bench press, have you ever seen those power lifters? And I actually don't think this is really great form if it's exaggerated too much, where they really arch their back.
Yeah.
And they might even take a wider grip to shorten the range between the bar and their chest. And but yeah, they're really trying to make it as easy as possible to lift the most weight as possible. And again, some of that technique is really not the best anyway. Though you do want to create in powerlifting, you're trying to create tension through your entire body so that you actually have the highest amount of force production for like a bench press. But if you're trying to bodybuild and you're trying to just build your chest, then you're actually focusing on not having as crazy of an arch. You still want to have your chest raised, but I want to get that full stretch, and I want to make sure that my chest muscles is generating that force to get it up. So I'm creating that tension, and I'm keeping that tension on that area as much as possible to intensify that mechanical tension to reach failure. So it's just a different approach to training. Mm-hmm. Now, if I do it that way, the way that I just described, if I do that week after week and I apply progressive overload, I'm going to get stronger, but I'm also, my musculature, my chest is going to get bigger, as opposed to just getting, my strength skill is increasing and I'm getting neurologically stronger. Because as far as I can read the literature, now I'd love for you guys to push back against this if you've read something different. As far as I see in the literature, when you lift weights, you usually get neurologically stronger first just by lifting. And eventually your muscles reach a plateau of like, unless we get bigger, we can't get neurologically stronger. So getting bigger is actually essential for getting stronger. And this is why I think phase potentiation, learning to say, I do a phase of strength training, I hit a plateau. I might try several techniques to break that plateau, but after a while, I need to take a little bit of a transition to say, I need to take these muscles that are now strong, crazy strong, and I need to try to get them to grow in size. And then after I go through mesocycle 2, maybe 3, maybe as much as a half a year of just trying to build muscle, because muscle building takes a long time, then I can go back to that strength training and resensitize them to the strength training mechanisms. And now I take those newfound muscle and they become neurologically strong to lift more weights, breaking through the previous plateaus. Any thoughts there, Than? Maybe you have some research there that you want to.
Yeah. I no, I don't disagree with you there. And I'm not. I'd be really surprised if we found literature going against this, just because it would kind of go against stuff that we know about, like muscle strength and hypertrophy to begin with. Because when you, at least when I survey the literature and I think about the science behind this, strength is going to come down to three things, which is going to be like motor unit recruitment, rate coding, and intermuscular coordination, right? Like those are going to be the three things that it comes down to. And the thing is, like you said, sooner or later you're going to hit a little plateau that's physiological in nature. Like the muscles are only going to be able to accomplish those three things based off of how much muscle you actually have in that area. And so you need to build more muscle so that way you can achieve more rate coding, more muscle recruitment, and all that stuff. So I think, like you said, switching gears and switching focus whenever you do hit those plateaus is going to be important if you want to get as strong and jacked as possible. Yeah.
Question. So on this podcast, before we have talked, for those who follow the podcast, we've talked about motor unit recruitment, rate coding. Do you have a good working definition of that, Than?
Yeah. I would just kind of call it the actually, here, let me pull up my notes really quick on this.
I think that would be
this is what I wrote
helpful.
down. This is kind of like what. Yeah, this is kind of what I go off of whenever I talk about this. I say it's the frequency at which motor neurons discharge action potentials. So an increased firing rate enhances force productions. Del Vecchio et al. In 2019 observed the strength training that strength training elevates motor unit discharge rates, which obviously then contributes to greater force output.
Yeah, so it's basically like a physiological mechanism that helps like control muscle force, something along those lines, I think. And so, yeah, this is all on the whole.
Maybe a good analogy for rate coding would just be like, can I talk about guns, I guess?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So just imagine like you have a pump action shotgun, right? Versus a
anybody that was zoned out now is like, sweet pump action
imagine
shotgun.
you have a pump action shotgun, and on the other side you have a guy with an M240 saw, and the rate coding is going to be the equivalent of how many rounds per second you could throw downfield. The M240 saw is going to get you a large amount of more rounds downfield than pump action shotgun, especially if you take into account like reloading and all that. The whole point is you're going to be able to fire at a frequency much higher with the M240 saw over the pump action. In the same way, imagine now a muscle that has, I'm going to just go really pop level here with this. Imagine you have two people and the rate coding rate of their biceps, for instance, is 4 per second. I'm not even going to go into quantities there, versus 8 per second. Well, what's going to happen then is the person with the 8 per second is going to be efficiently stronger than the person with 4. Does that make sense? Was that a good analogy?
Yeah,
I
that
don't know
was
if it
great.
That was a great analogy. I think you kind of simplified it
I'm going to
for us in
steal
a
it.
great
I'm going
way.
to steal it.
Yep.
Hey guys,
Absolutely.
I came up with this analogy.
Come on.
Oh, no, that's great. No, that's good.
Just edit this post process, and when I'm talking, just have a video of you going
your face,
Yeah.
just mouthing it.
All these great
That's
ideas.
Great.
I take the collective wisdom and claim it as my own. It's great. Go ahead, AJ. Yeah. Shoot.
So I was just thinking, like, kind of practically, whenever I'm working with like kind of new lifters or someone who's getting back into the gym, I tend to, for some of the reasons we listed, start them in like a more hypertrophy phase of training for the safety benefits, but also the strength is going to come along. The effects on the central nervous system are going, like, the muscles are going to become more efficient along the way, kind of as a byproduct, but they're going to feel more, it may be emotional, it may be just the physical ramifications of lifting. You're going to have more of a pump from the more hypertrophic form of training. And so you feel like you've accomplished more with like a higher rep range. You're not, like, whenever I do strength training, I find myself taking longer rest periods.
Smart. Yeah.
And so
yes.
Would you guys agree with that? Like, for especially someone entering into the space, like, start with more hypertrophy, maybe like that 12, even 15 rep range to, at least for starting, and kind of, you can receive benefits on both ends, the strength and the muscle size, or kind of
you want
form and function.
You want to set people up for success, and that is the best way, in my opinion, to do it. And just getting them in there and doing very light work, but doing it for a little bit longer than building just strength. It helps. I don't know if there's any science on this, but I know it helps your mindset as well. I won. I got that done. It feels really good. And then you grow from there. Like, okay, I can go a little bit more. That's the key of progressive overload. You start really small, and then week by week you get a little bit stronger. Like, if a guy went in who has never squatted before, never done a squat before, and they just squat 8 to 10 reps with the bar, right? 5 sets of 10 with the bar. That week, that's more than they've ever done. And then the next week, they just put 2.5 on each side. If they do that for a whole year and they just progressively, they're going to get stronger and they're going to feel really good. So you're building that strength and you're building that muscle size as well, because I mean, they went from 0. Now they're just progressively getting better. So progressively overloading your muscles, that's kind of like the golden rule of growth. So
yeah,
that is absolutely, I think, the best way to start somebody out, especially if they've never worked out before, or they haven't worked out, like they're 25 and they haven't worked out since high school when they had to do gym class. That's
exactly.
That's the best way to get them involved and to help them succeed.
And to be clear, just because this is a common misconception when it comes to progressive overload, maybe you guys disagree, but progressive overload is not just adding more weight to the lift, right?
Right.
This progressive overload is, hey, last week or last session, I got 7 reps of 50 pounds on the incline bench. Now I got 8 this time.
Now
that is progressive overload.
Right. It's not just weight. Correct. You add weight, you add reps, you add sets, or increase time under tension too. We could keep that process too. Just keep growing in that mindset. That's great, then. Yeah, thanks for.
Yeah, I think time under tension could be, if you're an endurance athlete and you're trying to measure some type of progress, that could be good for sure. You wouldn't do time under tension for like strength training, progressive overload, And for most muscle building, no, I don't think anybody's like, oh, hey, I did that entire set in 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'm going to try to increase that to 2 minutes. That's not a primary mover. The primary, and actually, what's probably better would be to say, instead of trying to do 12 reps this slow, I probably could do more reps, and knock it out, But I would say, though, it just depends on the goal. And this actually brings me to answering to AJ's question here. It's in the sports literature, they call it the principle of specificity. So I would start with, like, what is your goal? And if they don't have a real defined goal, just like, dude, I want to get jacked, I want to get lean, I would do hypertrophy. I wouldn't. And I would do basic exercises, though. And it would probably overlap with some, like, what would look like strength training, but it would be a little bit higher of rep range. I would want to make sure that they have solid technique, that they're learning these movements in a rep range that's not like trying to go, hey, we're going to do 5 sets of 3 reps. I wouldn't start there with somebody that was new. Here's a question for you guys. I don't know if you see this on Instagram or YouTube, but I see all kinds of a push today for hybrid training. Kind of was popular back in the early 2000s, at least in my mind. And at least like the power bodybuilding. Yeah, that was pretty popular. Now it's kind of like I'm a marathon runner, I'm a power lifter, and I'm really aesthetic. And I got almost kind of like a bodybuilding. I saw this guy, not making fun of him at all. He's actually like incredibly in shape. His name is Coach Blue. You ever see this guy on Instagram? He's like, he does these like all types of crazy calisthenic exercises. He's like ripped to shreds. He's big, and I think he was in the military as well. But he'll do like the push-ups with just his hands, his feet's not touching the ground. So he's doing that plank style push-up into a handstand, back down into it, do a push-up, back. It is like, all right. But one of the big emphases that he has is like, I'm a hybrid bodybuilder, and he's talking about doing all these type of things. Now, kudos to him. Great shape. He's doing a lot of things. Here's the thing that I want to stress, and I'm curious of y'all's thoughts. When you do hybrid, at first you might be like, hey, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting bigger, I'm getting faster, and it's all working pretty well. But eventually, if you want to maximize any of those categories, and this is true of Coach Blue as well, if he wanted to maximize his calisthenic potential, just being able to lift his body weight, then he's going to have to diminish these other categories. If he wants to become the fastest person that he could possibly be, then he's going to have to probably lose some of the muscle mass to accomplish that particular goal. And I'm just speaking in generalities, but my point is that hybrid approaches, if you're just satisfied with like, man, I just love all these modalities, I just enjoy them, I'm just trying to maintain a crazy amount of conditioning, it's like, fine, that's great. But if you want to become like the best bodybuilder, then you can't do all those modalities. Eventually, they're going to compete with each other. This is what happened for me, because for probably about 5 years, I subscribed to power bodybuilding style. So I would start with a power lift, and it would usually be like 5 sets of 5, or I would do even something like 7 sets of 2, 7 sets of 3. That's a lot of volume. But I would do that, and then I would follow it by some bodybuilding movements, and it worked for a long time. But eventually, because of the overall volume and intensity of the bodybuilding, it actually started to impact my powerlifting numbers, like the fatigue that occurred from training to mechanical, building that mechanical tension, getting muscular failure, impacted my frequency and the amount I could actually increase in my power lifts. My power lifts brought a certain amount of fatigue to it as well. And it kind of, after I did my power lift, 7 sets of 3, I mean, I was pretty zapped. So my ability to really work hard for hypertrophy also diminished. So I wasn't getting as big as I could possible because I was doing powerlifting, but I also wasn't getting as strong as I could possible because I was doing bodybuilding at the same time, and they became enemies. You guys had this experience at all? Any thoughts?
It doesn't surprise me, because look, the key word in what you just said is the word eventually. And I know that seems really nitpicky, but look, you can power build if you're new, because if people don't know, in your newbie stage, you're just primed to make adaptations. You are primed to build more muscle mass. You are primed to get stronger really quickly and really fast. And then when that stage ends and you start entering into that advanced stage, that's where it's going to slow down and you're going to feel like you're spinning your wheels. You'll probably still make progress, but this is where it kind of comes down to what I said earlier, which is, what do you just want to optimize for and what do you care about the most? Now, what I would recommend somebody do is going to be dependent upon what their goals are and what they enjoy doing at the same time too. Like, I have a client who is also a friend of mine who just actually does enjoy the power building style a lot. And he's not trying to be the next Mr. Olympia. He's not trying to compete. He's not trying to do a powerlifting meet or anything like that. And so he's totally fine with where he's at, knowing that there's going to be slow progress moving forward, rather than some more rapid progress relative to if we optimized for hypertrophy or for strength. And so that's a long-winded way of saying I'm not really surprised that you had that, John. But that doesn't make it a bad style either. It's just, if you're going to choose a training style, know your goals and know how that training style is going to affect those goals, and then just figure out what you care about, so that way you can either optimize for it, or not.
I think
that's all.
You go ahead, David.
Oh, I was just saying, I was on kind of the opposite spectrum of that. I would go in and just lift whatever, just go in and do the same thing over and over and over again, not knowing my goal, not having a goal, just going in and saying, I just want to lift, or I want to burn as much calories as I possibly can. And not knowing the goal, and then not knowing the science on how to get to the goal, really got me in the largest, in an unhealthy way as possible. John, you met me a year ago. It's been a year, man. A year ago, where I was bench pressing close to 300 pounds, right? That power, but I looked like the Pillsbury Doughboy, dude. It was terrible. And then with your help and getting into the science and then studying it on my own, that really got me down. I mean, like this morning, I'm cutting now. I was 171 yesterday versus my 240 a year ago.
It's crazy, man.
It was, and it's mainly that muscle growth, not strength training, but muscle growth. So if we go in not knowing what we want to do, we're going in blind. If you don't know what the goal of your plan is, your plan's going to be chaotic. But yeah, the mixed thing, that hybrid training, that wasn't even on my list. I was just like, I want to be strong. I want to lift my kids, and I want to look good too, but I didn't know how to get there. So
that's a really good point too, because like, I'm a nerd. I like to kind of categorize these things. Most people in, they're not thinking like hybrid, bro, hybrid. They're just like, they're not even, when you say modalities, they're like, what are you talking about? Like,
what are you talking about?
Strength and building muscle. Like, yeah, I want to do that, and they just want to be able to do, AJ, you were talking about this. They just want to do everyday life things better. They play with their kids. But maybe have maybe a few, like, I like to look better, feel better, move better, and that's in a minute, I want to transition to like, okay, how do we build this out for somebody that's listening in? But anybody want to add more to, I don't know, is there any type of bro science or anything that you guys have come across? Maybe something that you tried that you came to find out is like, oh, this really doesn't move the needle when it comes to getting stronger and bigger.
Well, there's a lot of bro science out there that I would say is not optimal. But I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, maybe that doesn't work. But like, the standard bro science training split is Monday's chest day, Tuesday is back day, Wednesday's leg day, then you got your shoulders, then you got arms, and then you got your 2 rest days over the weekend while you go drink and eat McDonald's, and right. And like, that's not the most optimal training split,
Right.
but you'll still get some results out of it. And so, like, that's an example of some bro science, I guess. The other bro science out there will just kind of be like, lift as much as possible and you'll get as big as possible, kind of a thing. But like, again,
yeah, when I think about that, I think of Ronnie Coleman and is like, lightweight buddy, type of thing, nothing but a peanut or whatever he says.
yeah,
And like you see these videos of him like just squatting 800 plus pounds or deadlifting, and the guy had crazy genetics, for sure. Even before, like, and people talk about him being on gear, but before he was on gear, he was like massive and huge. But like some of those guys actually could really do whatever. They just have a hard work ethic. They may not have like the perfect dialed in science, but they're putting in the work. They're doing some hard stuff. But I do think that people think, oh, if I go in and lift as heavy as possible, I'll get as big as possible. And that's not true.
Well, so I guess for me, the bro science would be like go in and kill yourself. And it's almost like you're doing penance for the bad diet and the bad workouts you did before.
Beast mode.
Right? Like, I got to get in there and I got to push it. And I'm leaving the gym. Like, I can't even, I'm crawling out of the gym.
Yes.
I find those chairs, whatever. I sit on the floor and I'm panting because I just killed myself. But the rest of the day is shot. I can't do the rest of my stuff. And it didn't show. I mean, it showed some progress, but it didn't get me to where I am today. Now, I don't mind killing myself in the gym. You got to bring it, but you got to be strategic about it as well.
Yeah, that actually goes into one point. This isn't bro science related, but I think it's really important. A lot of people, I think, have a really folk understanding of what training's supposed to be like and what the goals are and what's going to happen if you train a certain way. And what I mean is, like, the amount of times I've talked to a client, or like I've had a new client and I've given them their programming, for me to kind of hear back, we're like, well, this is kind of surprising. I wanted to look like what's his name? Dana White, the guy who he just lost a bunch of weight. He looks really good, all this other stuff, right? And the guy I was talking to pretty much was expecting a training protocol that matched Dana White's. And I was like, well, your goals aren't fitted to that kind of training style. And the basic idea here that I'm trying to unpack is, I think in people's minds, they think that the intensity of the workout programming will match the aesthetic goals that they have, rather than understanding, like, no, that's actually, like, the correlation there, if anything, is not non-existent at all, because the correlation is more so going to be matched to the fundamental principles of the training itself,
right,
to the outcome,
right,
because the mechanisms are still going to be there. You'll still get jacked if you train like Dana White, right? If you're doing everything the right way. It's just not going to be, again, optimized for somebody that wants to go to the beach this summer and have a six-pack and have popping delts and bicep veins and all that stuff. So
yeah, exactly. This happens to me all the time. People are like coming to you in the gym, and they might say, dude, what's your split? Because they think if they do that split, they'll get the same results. And it's not exactly the case. There's a number of factors playing in, but also I could train a certain way and have a different nutrition profile and look quite different, as opposed to like bulking versus like getting lean. Like it's not going to produce the same exact result, or I'm not going to put the same amount of muscle mass on or whatever, or it's not going to look as good because I'm bulking. I'm actually putting on a lot of muscle, but you're not seeing it because I'm also gaining some fat with that.
Right.
But yeah, I think there's a really good point with training modalities. Some people could do all the right things, but they actually haven't learned the intensity in training itself. Like, hey, you're actually working out. And this is what happens. And I tell my clients this too. If I see, like, this is particular for hypertrophy for those listening in. If I see like they're, hey, we want to do 3 sets of 12, and every single week they record their weight and it's 3 and it's 12 every single time. they're probably not quite getting close enough to failure, especially as we're approaching like more of a peak week. If it's like, if I start to see those rep ranges drop off, like the first set they got 13, then it was 11, and then it was 8, something like that. Like, oh, okay, that shows me that their actual working sets were exactly that. It was sufficient amount of work, because we're starting to see the performance drop off. You actually want to see the performance drop, because it's evidence that you're actually working out pretty hard. And so those are factors. I am curious though, from you guys, from a muscle building perspective, I'm not talking about strength training particularly, what's your favorite split?
PPL, modified PPL.
Okay. What's modified for you though?
Yeah. So keep what I'm gonna say. This is tailored towards
and also
me,
tell
my
people
psychology.
what that is too, so people know what you're talking about.
So before I get into that, I just want to say this is modified towards me in understanding my own body in such a great detail from doing this for so long.
Will we know you better because of this? Because this sounds great.
What?
No.
Oh no, it's mainly just the fact that like some of what I do actually might even go against some of the standard literature.
Oh, I see.
Of optimization, right? And so what I mean by modified PPL is I train about 6 days a week, and I go. It's PPL stands for push pull legs. And so I'll go push day. We'll have typically a DB incline press, followed by I have a cambered barbell at my gym, so I do a flat cambered barbell press, and then I do lateral raises, followed by. Sorry. My phone was blowing up and I needed to silence it. Sorry.
You're fine, man.
I thought it was silenced. So I'll do lateral raises, then I hit overhead tricep extensions, followed by a different angle for the tricep extensions. Pull will just be, I don't deadlift at all. I just do lat pull downs, a chest supported row, biceps, hamstrings, glutes, and then abs. Legs, I do delts again, believe it or not, on my leg day. Squats, reverse Nordic curls, hit hamstrings again, and then I hit forearms. And then for the day after legs, I kind of just do like a functional day, is what I call it, where I just kind of do a bunch of rehab stuff because in my past, I have just a bunch of injuries from different careers. And then I go straight back into the PPL routine that I normally have without really changing anything. Then I take a rest day after that. That is my favorite split.
So do you work out muscle groups twice through, basically?
Yeah. Everything 2 times a week. Some are hit 3 times a week.
Yeah, so like the delts, shoulders, you're adding extra.
And again, I wouldn't put just everybody on that. For me, I'm weird and I recover really quickly, even though I'm hitting things really hard. Like I can show you guys my tracking where I track everything. And yeah, so like anyway, long story short, I love this. But for a client, I'd probably still go PPL, but I would go more. I would literally say like you go 3 days on, 3 days off, and the things we're hitting are the things that are actually assigned for the name of that day.
Yeah. If somebody was trying to train for bodybuilding show, PPL is probably what I would do for someone. If they're just training for overall, like I'm just trying to get in shape for the summer, and a lot of times people will have like 3 to 4 resistance training opportunities. So I'd rather them hit their muscles groups with higher frequency than just annihilate one muscle group once a week. I'd rather them spread it out, just because when you do like 5 exercises for chest, the last 2 are probably almost certainly junk volume. Not always, but it tends to be like you've already stimulated this muscle as much as possible. Anymore, it's just like you're just accumulating fatigue at this point. But if you spread it out, you have more fresh opportunities to train. So I like a little bit more higher frequency. So I would do probably like an upper lower split, or I would end up doing like a little bit of legs every day, a little bit of upper body every day, like full body splits. Actually, I used to like say full body splits are stupid, like waste of time. I actually think they're really, really good. I like full body splits, but maybe it's because I like taking away a little bit of like leg day intimidation. I just want to be like, I'm going to do these 2 leg workout exercises that I have today, and I'm going to push hard. I'm going to crush it. But then I know it's like, hey, I'm done. Now I can move to, upper body. It's less systemically fatiguing.
Yeah.
I found.
I'd say my. Oh, go ahead, AJ.
I was just gonna say, like, personally, I like what Dan was saying, like the push pull legs. Like, especially if I'm exclusively in like the gym. I love that split, and adding in some extra delt work and like some specificity, I feel like goes a long way. But for most people starting off or trying to get like nailing down their structure, I find that like a full body split, like 3 days a week or even 2 days a week, can get like some crazy results, and it takes away, like you said, the intimidation of like I was talking with someone and they were like, "Oh, tomorrow's leg day," and I'm like, "Man, you're worried about a workout that's coming tomorrow. Like that's not the association you want someone to have with fitness." I think it's that lift of getting to the gym to go and suffer is too draining for consistency, and it leads to like failure or losing consistency, and like so.
Do you guys think this is getting in the weeds a little bit? Dave, were you about ready to say something?
Let's go.
Oh no, I was going to say my favorites are the upper lower splits. That's my favorite.
I think we did. Didn't I do a full body with you? And you were like, "Yeah, John, this is great, but can we switch that back?"
Yeah, yeah. I was like, full body. I like it, but nah, yeah. No.
Dave is always super nice, but like I could tell, like if he's giving me pushback, he's like, "This sucks. Let's change." That's great.
No, I hated doing legs every day. Really, I enjoy the upper lower split. I do like the PPL as well. That's what I'm on right now, and I've noticed a difference in the last several weeks, and I really enjoy the PPL. But my favorite, I would have to say, is the upper lower split through the week. Just my weeks, I don't mind doing all leg day. But then again, I'm not at a conventional gym. I'm at a home gym where my leg day consists of like squats and then whatever I can find around here. Just as long as John doesn't give me Bulgarian split squats, I'm okay. It's all good.
The best.
But yeah, no, for me, I think the mentality going into it really does help. If I go into it like, oh, stink, it's leg day, I don't do as well. But if I go in thinking, man, this is it's gonna hurt, and it's gonna take a lot of energy, but that's gonna make me feel so good afterwards. It actually helps me hit that workout with intensity, and it makes a huge difference. My wife has noticed, like within my quads and hams, she's like, "Honey, that looks really good. I can't believe how like
you can retire now. You've reached it." When the wifey says, "This is it,"
that's it, honey. You've done it.
Opposite. When I was before all my surgeries and everything, my wife used to look at my legs and my butt, and she literally said, "If I had a butt as big as yours, I would blow it off with a shotgun."
This is going to be a reel. This is going to be a reel.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
I got like no butt though. Like no butt. It's like gone.
It just slips off.
It's gone.
So this is kind of backtracking, but I did want to get you guys' thoughts on kind of returning to like the strength versus hypertrophy discussion.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's what we were talking about.
So one of the things we pointed out with strength is that it tends to have higher risk to the reward. But something I've kind of been studying and I've heard recently is that isometrics actually do a good job of training like the CNS, the nervous system, and they have almost no risk. Like on the on failure is just you stop holding the position. And so where do you guys think that falls in with like training? I feel like kind of the bro science like don't like doing isometric movements or holds because they don't look cool. They're not as flashy, I guess. Like no one wants to see like an Instagram reel of someone like just holding a chain that's attached to the floor. Yeah. But it does seem like isometrics can benefit strength immensely without some of those risks. So what do you guys kind of think about that?
Yeah, this is a great question. So isometric holds will make you stronger for isometric holds, but it doesn't actually translate to, remember, strength is force times distance. Okay. So you're actually not developing the skill of distance. Now, where I say isometric is really good is if somebody has a hard time like maintaining good control in the hole, then I might introduce like a pause, and it might actually be good for them to do a longer extended pause so that they really get good at the transition. Because a lot of dive bomber squat people, they like dive down to the bottom and they haven't learned to actually control the way down and allow for their own raw force production to get up out of the hole. So isometric holds can be helpful for that. Some people do like the wall sits with weight, type of thing. It doesn't always translate to the movement itself. You get really good at wall sits, but it doesn't necessarily translate to doing squats better because you're not against a wall when you're doing squats. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think there's a place for it. I don't think it is a suitable replacement for actual like full range of motion, force times distance. Also, you're definitely not going to build any level of speed. Like being able to fire those muscles. Am I misunderstanding you? Maybe I misunderstood.
So I wasn't saying like a replacement at all. I was thinking more that you would use this as a like, because whenever I think of strength, it seems to be more geared towards like that. Like you said, the distance time or distance and
force
weight.
And distance. Yeah,
force and distance. But it seems like isometrics can help you with like the muscle, mind muscle connection, like in recognizing and then increasing that the force production that can come in the muscle is what. Maybe I was misunderstanding the study, but that I would love my understanding.
Love to see that study. I don't even know if you want to. I mean, no pressure here because like we're online here. But if you could pull it up.
Yeah, let me see if I can get that real quick.
I would be glad to see it.
Isometric holds, I mean, they help with balance in certain exercises, especially like a plank. They help with balance. So that could, I don't know. Maybe that's what they're thinking.
It can. If you want to do balance stuff, I think at least based off the literature, right? Like overwhelmingly, dynamic movements within an optimal range of motion are going to be better like every single time, especially when you factor in everybody's goals in general. Like an isometric unilateral hold is going to keep you balancing in that one position, whereas just imagine like you did a single leg deadlift over and you compared that to a single leg deadlift isometric hold in the middle position of the range of motion, right? I'm willing to bet that the person doing the full motion is going to come out stronger with better balance if all they did was those singular movements. And the fatigue to stimulus ratio is going to be better for that full motion as well. And so, at least in my opinion, I don't see a reason to add them in when you only have so much fatigue and so much stimulus you can really account for. Get as much stimulus as you can without putting in movements that aren't going to get you the reward for the fatigue that you're getting. Does it make sense what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Anytime I can cut out isometric training.
I don't know what you think about that, John, but
no, I do agree. I do think that the going back to specificity, if somebody like really enjoyed, like for instance, yoga, and they just like they wanted to increase strength, by doing these type of moves, it's totally legitimate. You can get stronger for sure. But will it translate to making maybe the main lifts better? Potentially, but not maybe worth, as Stan was pointing out, the fatigue that it can incur. Might as well just, if you're doing regular controlled movements, nice controlled eccentric, even if you utilize a slight isometric at the bottom and then back out, I think that's would be sufficient. Yeah, go ahead. Read that for us, AJ.
So what I was looking at here was substantial improvements in muscle hypertrophy and maximal force. I jumped to the wrong spot. So isometric training at long muscle lengths produced greater muscle hypertrophy when compared to equal volumes of shorter muscle length training. Ballistic intent resulted in greater neuromuscular activation. So substantial improvements in muscular hypertrophy and maximal force production were reported regardless of training intensity. So maybe I was misunderstanding what that was saying, but my understanding was that it was saying that that the isometric was helping with the force production. But like I said, I'm new to reading the actual studies. So
you're fine. So the one of the keys, and Than, you can weigh in here too, and David, but you have the longer muscle length, so that's really what is being hit on at this point. I was still looking at that, but that's okay.
My apologies. I can bring it back. My apologies.
I was making sure that I got the wording right, so I didn't misquote the study. But
it was in the stretch position, John. Yeah.
So the stretch position being the key for producing hypertrophy, as opposed to the shortened position, which when you do an isometric hold, usually you're trying to stretch the muscle and hold it. So the isometric hold accomplishes the stretch position, which is more hypertrophic. There's some recent literature too that's kind of coming back towards you need the stretch, but the stretch isn't the all be all type thing. You actually have hypertrophy in the contraction or the shortened position as well, and having all of these present. But yeah, there it is true that actually a good stretch routine can be hypertrophic, but it's not going to be maximizing hypertrophy. In other words, you can develop muscle from good stretching, but it's not going to be quite the stretch under load that full range of motion training would do. Now, this is just my opinion, not based on literature on this point. I would
actually,
say,
I don't remember what the study is. Give me a second so I can find it. But I'm going to mute.
You guys done here? I can pull this down now.
So I'm looking at it, and that was talking mainly about rehabilitation or just doing that stretch after, just on your an active rest day. I think that's what I was reading on that.
On the study that AJ shared.
Yeah. Is that what that was talking about? Just the stretching after that. So, okay, but I mean, in the sense of let's just use a bench press as an example. That stretch you get downward, that does help your muscle grow, right? That downward, and it's I don't know if it's necessarily. I think Than was saying this, if you hold that longer, you actually waste more energy, and you don't produce as much muscle growth or strength. If you hold it too long, you can actually lose quite a bit of force. So your strength is damaged.
And this is depending on the lifter too. Sometimes when you stretch and you stretch really far, it actually starts to shift to other aspects of the musculature, as well. So it's get a sufficient amount of stretch, and then going back up to the top. These different aspects of repetition can aid in hypertrophy, and so I do think getting a good contraction in the shortened position is good.
Yes.
But if you actually contract too hard, too long at the top, you might take away from getting more repetitions in. So it's in balance. But you learn this as you train more. We're really straining at it, in the sense that somebody puts in enough repetitions. Let's say they didn't get quite enough stretch, but they got sufficient stretch and they got a pretty decent contraction. They're going to get better at the whole mechanics of lifting. Dan, did you find that study?
Yeah, I did. So this is actually a really interesting study that was done. J.G. Barnett et al. I'm trying to figure out what year it was published. Well, either way, and I can give this to you guys too. It was really interesting. I'm not saying this is confirmation either. It's just an interesting study to consider. They basically what they did is they put an apparatus on some birds and actually stretched the wing out. And this is clearly not the most ethical study they've done, right? But they stretched the wing out incredibly, and what they actually found was that it was hypertrophy inducing.
Oh, yes, I've read this study. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so that lines up with this isometric hold idea that AJ's talking about, which is, but the key point here isn't the fact that it was an isometric thing. It was strictly the stretch position load component of it that they probably are picking up on. And I think it's just an instance of misplacing the mechanism of the outcome to the isometric hold rather than the actual stretching itself.
You guys know when you do like you get on an incline bench and you're doing bicep curls, but you're just leaning back. When your arms are by your side, like they're actually behind you because you're on an incline bench, it pre-stretches the biceps. And it's like one of the best exercises. But one of the reasons that it is because it keeps the biceps really at that stretch position. And so that's kind of going off of, that's why there's a lot of
two studies. Okay.
Yeah. And there's some exaggerations of that today being played out. Yeah. I saw this person, it actually might be a great exercise. I don't know the science about it, but somebody had their bench almost at a elevated decline. So they were trying to really exaggerate the stretch of their arms, like way behind them,
way back.
And wow, it looked really uncomfortable. I'm thinking, I don't know if that's probably a bit much, but it was kind of an interesting thing. I know. I appreciate you guys bringing that up. I think that's going to be really helpful for those listening in. Now, we got a few more minutes here probably before we need to land this. I did have one other controversial thing, and then I want to tie it up with a quick, okay, let's talk about, we kind of dissected this, right? Now we're going to put it back together and say, what does it look like to build an effective program to get as strong and jacked as possible? But I'm just curious, what do you guys think about, is straight sets better, or is supersets or derivatives of that better?
I would say, man,
loaded question.
You can't ask these binary questions without expecting more nuance. You know what you're doing.
What better means, and what do you mean by better?
So I'll say this. I think they're better I think the supersets are better insofar as if you do like a protagonist antagonist superset.
Yeah.
And they're better insofar as the fact that they just save time. It's not going to be, to me, it's in my survey of the literature, it's not the fact, it's like if I hit my chest and then superset that with a lat workout, it's not going to make the chest workout magically do some spooky hypertrophic stuff, right? All that's really happening is I'm just accomplishing more under less time.
Yeah.
Because I'm able to hit a different muscle group that's not gassed at the moment. I will say there are cons to it too. And one of the reasons I don't do it is because I train pretty close to near failure. I usually train every single set 0 to 3 reps in reserve. And so when I train lats, I'm typically gassed. If I do a superset, I'm typically gassed enough where I don't want to do another superset and not I won't be able to hit that 0 to 3 reps in reserve again unless I'm doing a smaller muscle group. If I'm doing triceps, then I'm fine to do a superset of biceps because the muscle group is small enough where the recovery window is super short and it doesn't really take the systemic fatigue isn't that high.
Yes.
So it all depends on the nuances there, but that's my take.
No, that actually lines up exactly with the literature. And usually the limiting factor, if you're doing a superset, is unless you're really conditioned, it's cardio. Your heart rate cardio is going to be the limiting factor. And if you do circuit training where you're doing 4 exercises back to back, that if you're just going for overall conditioning, that's not a bad way to go about it. But if you're trying to maximize like building muscles, then it'd be better to do just straight sets. I think supersets are good for maybe checking the boxes of time, maybe a little bit of conditioning there, like if I'm just trying to push the overall conditioning of someone. But generally speaking, I think keeping it separate is good. So like do muscle building activities and then do some other things that are going to work on just overall conditioning. Again, this is just totally my opinion, by the way, but I think that would be an optimal approach. But I was just curious of what you guys thought.
And if you want to add in cardio, do something you enjoy at the end of the day for cardio. Like for me, martial arts and boxing are like my favorite forms of cardio.
I didn't know you did martial arts. What form?
Yeah, I love martial arts.
What form?
So I mainly do jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and then if I'm doing anything else, it's typically just like a boxing.
That's sweet. Know your friends, or maybe enemies. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding.
I do consider firearm training cardio. Like I do 3-gun courses and stuff like that too. So.
Oh, that's cool. That's pretty.
Yeah, it's fun.
That explains your gun knowledge over there.
Yeah. Say what?
Compare this to a shotgun. No, it's good.
Yes. Yes.
So I was gonna say, like, especially when I first started, like I felt like supersets were like whatever my second exercise was, I couldn't really get it wasn't as effective unless I was doing like smaller body parts. But I noticed after my last triathlon session, whenever I came back to the gym, my conditioning was so honed in that I found supersets to be a lot more like I could actually superset my workouts
and take them both to failure. Do them well.
Yeah, and take them, and I attribute that to the fact that I'd spent 6 months doing basically almost exclusively cardio, but I do feel like there was you have to know your own like conditioning.
And I also think like when I actually still enjoy doing supersets for arms, just because they're not as systemically fatiguing. They're more localized fatigue, so I can crush biceps and go straight into triceps, and I'm not really that winded, from it. But if I superset like quads and hamstrings, I would die.
Yeah, I don't know anybody who does that.
Yeah, maybe, but that.
Oh yeah, Dave.
Well, only because John did it for me.
Yeah, now he's just like, okay, he really did hate me. Rats.
Yeah,
it's one of those moments where I actually do something that is probably not that optimal, but I just like doing it. I love supersetting my leg extensions with hamstring curls.
Oh, okay.
It's fun. Actually, I enjoy that as well. It's kind of
it's so painful, but there's just like I'm wired weird,
but that also does shift to kind of more local fatigue as opposed to systemic fatigue.
Right. It's not a systemic; it's more local, and it works pretty well.
Leg extensions for me are really systemically fatiguing.
Really? Oh, you mean you feel like you're going to throw up? I do feel like I'm going to throw up when I do leg curls. Leg extensions.
Leg curls are harder for me.
Both are very systemically fatiguing for me. But why? I have no clue. I have big legs. That might be part of it.
Yeah,
but
we've already discussed you have a big butt, so
that's funny.
Oh,
so let's put this together. Let's take like a couple more minutes here. We need to wrap things up, but I'm curious of like a progression that you guys would do. It sounds like most of you guys would say a general person coming in want to get as strong and jacked as possible. Probably do more hypertrophy training, and they'll get stronger over time. Progressive overload. Anything that you would add to it, like somebody's listening and saying, okay, give me something to go off of. I'm going to start on Monday. Like what should this look like? Give me a 30,000 foot view.
I have a standard model that I work with when it comes to people. Did I cut you off, Dave? I'm sorry.
I was saying, I know there's probably a delay. Me being all the way over here in California, you guys in the Midwest.
That's it. That's the delay.
A long delay. No, I was saying, give us a call. We'd love to sit down with you and talk about it. But yeah, to just kind of do, I think it's more of what do you think you're going to enjoy if you're in it. What are you going to enjoy? Are you going to enjoy a PPL? Or are you going to enjoy an upper lower split? What are you going to enjoy? What do you think you're going to enjoy? And then and then hit it. Do the progressive overload, train hard, and I think as well, make sure you schedule enough recovery time too. Sleep, nutrition, hydration, active recovery, rather than just doing nothing on your days off is super important part of the training as well. Stay consistent. I think that's a big part. Instead of focusing on like, okay, let's do chest one day, back the next, legs, shoulders, and then a full body, or weak point, like that weak point focus that people talk about. Instead of doing that, I think really talking to a coach and explaining what you need or what you think you need is a huge benefit to help really dial in those needs.
I think
without
even
knowing
like
your personal thing. Yeah, go ahead,
sorry.
AJ.
I was going to say, I think working with coach, or even just like in a group setting, like vocalizing your goals can help you to get specific.
Oh, yeah.
Like why, like I think a lot of times whenever they come into the gym, they say, I want to get in shape. And they don't really have a idea of what that means, or they have an idea of what that means, but they don't know practically what that means for them. So like we were talking about like hybrid athletes, like I know that I sacrifice like muscle size because I enjoy the sport of triathlon. And like if I get up in the morning and ride my bike and go to the pool, that's time I'm not in the gym. I'm willing to make that sacrifice because I love doing my triathlons a couple times a year. And I'm making that exchange. And I also know like, okay, this mesocycle, I'm probably not going to gain any strength, but that doesn't mean I won't. If I start feeling like whenever I did that half marathon, I looked in the mirror and I was like, I look scrawny, and I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". Like I don't ever want to look scrawny. So I was like, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to step back from the cardio a little bit. I'm going to lift. I'm going to really dial in. I'm going to be doing some hypertrophy workouts. And I think a lot of being intentional about what is my goal? Why am I in the gym today? And not just today, but why am I in the gym for this 6-8 weeks? And talking through with someone like, I want to be able to run around the yard with my kids. Cool. Like these are the steps that can lead you into success in that area. I want to go down a few pant sizes. Great. This is how we're going to lose weight. I want to be able to help my friends move. Great. This is how we're going to build some functional strength. And you can take time and say like, okay, over the next however long, I'm going to focus on growing in this area and being specific instead of just, to use since we're using gun illustrations, like the difference is like being a sniper rifle, being very accurate and hitting a specific target versus like a shotgun of just like blasting everywhere.
Yeah. I like that.
What I always tell people is, and I always kind of work with this model just because I think whatever training split you use, granted that you are hypertrophy focused, is pick the split that works for your schedule, that lines up with what you want to do the most, and you can do the safest and all that stuff. And then basically what I tell people is just start with an 8 to 12 range for each workout, and then as soon as you can start aiming for, I think, the optimal like 0 to 3 reps left in reserve number. And when you start consistently hitting 12 or more reps, that's when you up the weight of that movement. Again, depending on what movement you're doing. If it's something where it's like a smaller muscle group, maybe 16 reps or something like that. But the main point that I'm trying to get at is like 8 to 12 rep range of whatever muscle group that you're targeting, and then up the weight whenever you're consistently hitting more than 12 or 16 reps, depending on the muscle movement. That way you're actually forcing a progressive overload, and it's easier to track that way. That would be like one small bit of advice I would give to somebody that's getting into this.
What about rest periods in between? Right? Because that's important in my in my book. I mean, not just because I'm fatigued, but there's some science to it as far as getting the nutrients into your body.
Yeah. So for like
getting your muscle ready to work out.
Yeah. So for rest, it's like when you feel like you can get back under the weight and you feel like you can approach it with strength, go for it. For some people, that might be 60 seconds, 90 seconds. If you're doing multi-joint movements, it's probably going to be like 90 seconds or more. I probably wouldn't wait longer than 3. If you're inexperienced, you probably don't need to wait that long. But just like, hey, do I feel like I can go back and hit this? Like, don't waste time. Don't just sit on your phone for 5 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
But I like to really help people think of like intensity in the lift. I mean, if you want to do like bigger breaks and make your gym session really long, that's up to you. As long as you're working out really hard in the sets, it's fine. But I think there is something to say you want to not wait too long to get cold, you know, so you know you're still warmed up and ready to go, and you're not going back too soon to where you know, you can still feel that disruption in the muscle. The cardio is not leveled out yet. You want to wait long enough to level that out. So there is not an absolute time, but as a coach, I normally, for beginners, I'm like between like 60 and 90 seconds is some right in there for that. And if it's now, there's exceptions. Like if somebody's training calves, like, man, those things recover so fast. Like you're not sitting a long time between like calf training. You 45 seconds to a minute, you should be good to go back and hammer out another set pretty quick.
Plenty.
But to kind of piggyback off of Than without like just saying the same thing that you guys have already said, a couple things that I would do, I would try to say, you were talking about picking a split and all that kind of stuff. I would try to work out all my muscle groups twice a week. I would start there. Some muscle groups recover faster. Like if you train quads really hard, twice a week is probably as much as you're going to do. Some people might be able to etch out a third one, but usually it's about twice. For like shoulders though, like, man, I could hit my side delts like 4 to 5 times a week, and I'm good to go. But starting out, it can be a little bit hard to manage everything. If you're like, okay, I got my delts are 5 times a week, my quads are 2 times a week, that can be a little much. But if you just say everything twice a week, you can get it into a good upper lower split or a push pull leg scenario. Start with training your multi-joint movements first. So I wouldn't do a fly motion like a butterfly, then do a bench press. I would do my bench press first, then the fly. If you want to maximize getting strong and jacked. If you're just trying to get jacked, it probably doesn't matter as much, the order. But like you could do flies first and then bench press. Your numbers for bench press will go down, of course. So if you're interested in seeing that go up, then you might want to try to start with that multi-joint movement. So for legs, it might be like leg press, squat, you know, something along those lines, a deadlift. Again, there's a lot of people that just don't deadlift. They don't see the utility.
Yeah, I don't.
From a building perspective, I honestly, a deadlift, to just digress there, for building overall strength, it's fine. But like, what muscle does it hit to where it like exhausts it? What muscle? If you name a muscle, I'm going to tell you there's a better exercise to train that muscle directly.
Yeah, exactly.
If you say, "Oh, I'm training my glutes," yeah, there's a better way to train your glutes than just doing deadlifts.
It's just super fun to pick up several hundred pounds. Yeah, right.
Everybody wants to be a bodybuilder. Nobody wants to lift that heavy weight.
Right. You want to look jacked in the gym. I have a home gym, so I work out in front of my wife. So I'm like, "Watch this, honey." Boom. Yeah, that's right. And she's like, "Oh yeah, I love it. I love it." But for me, honestly, the deadlift it's an optional thing. It's not one of those.
I still love doing it. I actually put it in my programming throughout the year. I still try. I do have a desire. This is not super impressive at all, but like I'm pretty close. I'm like flirting with 600-pound deadlift. I don't know, Than, what you've pushed around on that, or I've been.
Well, I'm a light person, so because I don't know how much you weigh, John, but I weigh 165, so 600-ish is what's whatever 7 plates on each side is in a 25. I've done that, but I'm light, so that's me just trying to say I'm pretty good.
yeah. So deadlift is probably my like strongest. I have a really strong posterior chain.
That's 725 for those listening at home.
Yeah. You've hit 725?
once in my it's not I'm gonna say once in my life. In my prime.
I'm only 160.
I don't know how big you are, John, but
come on.
John's tall, so I'm gonna guess, John, you're like 220.
Not right. I'm actually dipping under 220 now because I'm in a cutting phase. But when I'm kind of like not bulking, but just kind of sitting, I'm at 220, 225.
Oh, cool. So I was like pretty spot on.
But I actually, in this cutting phase, I might dip under 200. Wow, I haven't been under 200 in a long time. It's just strange, but we'll see what happens. But what I'd like to do is try to establish a new standard for leanness, and then slowly build back up. I'd love to be like really lean and at 220, but I don't know if I'll be able to quite get there. That might be a much. We'll see.
So John,
I was going to say, I'll just finish this up. If you want to multi-joint movements, then I like to follow that by like more isolation work if I'm doing that. I like the 8 to 12 rep range. A lot of times I'll start a client with like between the 10 and 20 rep range. But if they're trying to bias towards strength, I actually like to try to shoot between the 8 to 10, 8 to 12 rep range a little bit more. And pick a couple of exercises, get some different angles on training the muscles for just overall like muscular development. Like you can do, if you're doing like chest, throwing some incline in there is probably a good idea. Hitting muscles from multiple angles, especially if you're trying to, again, get as jacked as possible, that would be good. So if you're doing every muscle group twice a week, different angles, start with multi-joints, then to isolation, the 8 to 12 rep range. You do that, you're going to be pretty good. Last thing that I'll say is, if you really want to take it to the next level, doing some type of phase potentiation where you have a strength-focused dedication time, where it's like, I'm going to focus mainly on strength, a little bit of a hypertrophy there for maybe a training cycle or two. And then you follow that by a hypertrophy-focused training phase where the strength training takes a back seat. You might still have a few elements, try to, hit a couple of movements where you're hitting, between that 2 to 5 rep range is fine, but you're going to spend the majority of your time really focusing on hypertrophy. That's what I would do later if I was trying to really push the envelope further in my strength and hypertrophy together, if I was trying to get as strong and jacked as possible. So hopefully that gives you, whoever's listening, enough to bite off. David, you were going to say something, or maybe it was AJ?
No, I was just going to say, kind of looking at all of it, make sure it's a progressive type of thing where you start in a safe rep range, 6 to 12, 8 to 12, 8, even further than that if you want to. I like what Dan said. Once you get up to 12 or 16, depending on the muscle group, to consider putting on more weight. I try to push myself every week to do just a little bit more weight or more reps, and then just train hard. Big mistake if you go in just lazily, without a purpose behind that. Get that workout in. You're not trying to necessarily pay for your sins when you do it, but you need to work out hard. If you don't learn to work out hard, you're not going to see any success. So, or very small, very limited success.
Yes.
Stay consistent. Stay consistent in your workout and your recovery too. Sleep, I found this is immensely important.
Oh yeah.
Don't think you can get 4 to 5 hours of sleep and go into the gym and get your optimal workout. You're not going to do it. So that's just my
John.
Yeah, that's right.
Fan. No.
We definitely need to do a session on sleep and nutrition as it relates to this type of topic. But today, obviously, we focus mainly on the training aspects. But all of those, those are really the big three. Like, if you're going to train really hard, matter of fact, training really hard facilitates like your body naturally wants more nutrition. Mm-hmm. And if you're getting good training and nutrition, you're going to sleep better. And if you're sleeping better, really training's going to be better. And it starts a good cycle. And you definitely want to get into that cycle. If not, and things can throw that off too. Stress makes you not eat well, and you don't feel like training, then you don't sleep well, and it can throw you off. So you're really trying to optimize these rhythms to get into like optimal health. So anyways, wow, this session went long and I loved it. Thank you guys for contributing in different ways. for those listening in, if you have any like thoughts or questions, or you need help building a program, feel free to reach out to us. And if there's anybody here that you would like to talk to specifically, we can get you connected there as well. The only thing I'm going to say is I'm going to probably head to the gym, and I'm going to try to hit 730 on my deadlift so I could just be a fan. 730 is all I need.
Full disclosure, I cannot do that anymore.
Oh yeah, I'm like, I need a video for this. No video, you never did it. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's good, man.
I could not do that to save my life anymore. I'm older. I have more pain. And I have a different training style and everything.
Oh yeah, me too. Like the people ask me all the time, like, "Hey, dude, how much can you bench?" I'm like, I don't know. Actually, I don't know what my max is.
I don't know anymore. I don't push numbers anymore, man. I'm too old to do that. I can't. I used to go in there and be like Sam Sulek and just abuse the weight, and now it's like, no, I can't.
Yeah, totally. 7:30, here it comes. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.